This is Susan Bradley for AskWoody.com, and this is Task for the Weekend, February 13th, 2021. Now, I'm not ready yet to give the go-ahead to install updates at this time. I'm still in testing mode, but this is the weekend that I make sure that I've got good backups. And I'm going to show you some of the settings I have for my backup I have here at home. So, why should we do a backup? First off, unless you totally live in the cloud, meaning that everything that you work on and use is up on like a cloud service, you need a backup. If for nothing more, to get your icons and your settings just so on your desktop. I mean, even an iPad, I back up my iPad. Even my phone, I back up my phone. There comes a point in time where things break, and I want to make sure that I have the necessary backup. Backups protect you from ransomware, malware, hard drive failure, and last but not least, it empowers you to install updates. Now, why do I say that? Because I have a confidence that should anything happen, should the worst thing occur, where I have a blue screen of death or something that I cannot recover from, I can always take my backup and I can restore back to where I was. So I always want to make sure I have a backup. Now, backups software is kind of like antivirus software. There's lots of them out there. It sometimes comes down to personal preference. Sometimes it comes down to what you have confidence with. Pick one. I also prefer paying for one versus free, and I'll tell you the reason why. Why? Because number one, you make sure that you get updated software. It's a supported backup system, and things do change. Windows 10 feature updates do make changes sometimes in how a backup needs to occur, and so therefore if you have a supported platform, meaning that you're paying for it, they will give you updates. Most of the paid versions also include anti-ransomware technology, meaning that they protect your external drive from being seen by the ransomware software. So if a ransomware attacks your system, normally ransomware, whatever drives and whatever things that you have access to, the ransomware attackers have as well. So if you have the paid versions of the backup software, they usually set it up so that the backup software is under a different user profile, and therefore permissions are set so that the attackers can't go after it. Bottom line, the permissions of the backup are not the same as you, and so therefore it's protected. Now, when you install the backup software, check the options that you have. Now, usually for home systems, I don't set up something. This is in the paid version of Macrium Reflect, and I don't set up what's something called VI boot or virtual machine booting, because usually on workstations I don't have VMware set up. Servers I do, but usually on workstations I don't. And this is where I say pay for one, because as you can see, it's installing the Image Guardian ransomware protection for backups. The other thing that I always choose when I go to install is I change the boot menu. What this does, it makes it easier for me to recover should something happen. It actually adds rather than booting straight into Windows, it boots into the almost that recovery menu system where you get a screen up and it says, which one would you like to boot into? Would you like to boot into the backup recovery image, or would you like to back up in or boot into Windows 10? And you get a few seconds to then choose the right one. And especially if you're needing to recover, it's really much easier if you've got it set to recover into the backup software technique process rather than straight into Windows 10. The next decision you have to make, and I'll show you this in the menu system in just a bit, they usually give you two options: cloning, an exact copy, or imaging, which is more compressed. Now, normally when I'm resizing a hard drive, for example, some of my desktops, Windows 10, invariably you think you buy a big enough hard drive and then you find out later on, I didn't buy a big enough hard drive. So then I usually swap out an SSD drive for a bigger one, and I use cloning, which gives me an exact copy when I move from a smaller hard drive to a bigger hard drive. Imaging is more compressed, and especially if you have a limited space on an external hard drive, that's when you choose that. And usually what I do is I purchase Western Digital external hard drives for this process. Usually the thing I back up to is an external USB hard drive. Here's, for example, a Western Digital. They come in various different sizes, reasonably priced. If I'm backing up a laptop, I usually pick a much smaller device, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Now this is the device I usually get for my laptops, because laptops I like to have things small, so I don't have an external big hard drive on it. And for that, I can actually just put it in the USB slot on the side of the laptop and leave it in there. And you can get, as you can see, reasonably priced ones these days that have quite a bit of space. And usually for my laptops, the bulk of them I usually have 100 gig, 200 gig, something like that. So you can get a 256 gig or a 512 gigabyte that will more than fit what you need to back up on your laptop. And this, again, it gives me the ability to ensure that I can recover quickly should something occur. Knock on wood, usually on my laptops they come through patching just fine. I have at times had some hard drive failures, so that's what this is for. Now, how often should you back it up? I set up my machines, actually, my laptops in particular, to back up nightly. The servers at the office do it multiple times during the day. Even my desktops at the office, I do in them at least once a day. I always say, the old saying, you can never be too rich or too thin. You can never have enough backups. Also consider having another backup, especially for things that you really, really, as I call it, would cry if you lost. If you have any digital photos that you just don't want to lose, have something else, not just have multiple physical hard drives so that you can swap them out. Also consider to have a cloud service, something like a OneDrive, a Box service, something where additional copy is up there in the cloud. So now I'm going to look at some of the settings I have in my backup. And the first thing that I do, again, is I go in here into the backup and I click on this option right here to create a boot menu for the Windows system. So that way when I reboot the system, it'll slightly delay and it'll give me the option to go either into the backup menu so I can restore, or it goes into Windows 10 and it does a few seconds delay on the rebooting, not a big deal, and I always choose that. You can also build a USB hard drive or build a CD-ROM, and absolutely do this as part of a normal process. You always want to plan on the worst case scenario, so you want to make sure that you have either the boot menu change or a USB based hard drive so that you can boot externally and get back into that restore. Then I have the various different partitions in my computer. I have two different drives, external drives connected, as you can see here. And I create a backup, and I back up every single part of it. And I can either image the disks or create an image of the partitions, or just do a file and folder backup. I prefer a full backup. I back up the entire system. I back it up to an external hard drive. And I go in here and I pick all the different partitions and I choose the location. And then I click on Next. And I say I'm going to do, you can choose however many backups. And this is retention rules are usually defined by how big of an external hard drive. And the bigger you can get, the more the more backups, the more images you have. And this is especially handy. Let's say you accidentally save over the top of something, you know you can roll back. I usually set it up to do it nightly, and when I'm done, I click Finish. And then I can say, do I want to run this backup now? Do I want to save this? And I'm going to run this now. And you can see that it's running the backup, creating a snapshot. And while this backup is going, you can actually use your computer at the same time. It does not impact anything on your computer. To me, I've never seen any real big slowdown on my system. And it should do it pretty fast. Especially when you have it set up to do incrementals and things like that, it'll do it pretty quickly. As you can see, it's doing the C drive, remaining time 16 minutes. So I hope that gives you an idea of the process that you should go through when you do a backup of your system. Again, I recommend making sure that you have boot media, or you change the boot order. And again, most of the paid versions of the backup software will allow you to do this. And then I recommend that you have an external hard drive that you back up to, not use something inside the hard drive itself. Obviously, you want something external. Even backup laptops. Again, for laptops, I use smaller little USB flash drives. And you get the idea. As always, have a great week. The newsletter includes a consumer overview this week. Business patching will be discussed in detail in next week's Patch Watch. Until next time, this is Susan Bradley for AskWoody.com.